Right, so get this. We're heading back over 20,000 years
Oh,
to a Pleistocene.
okay.
Ice Age,
Yeah.
woolly mammoths, the whole bit.
Right.
Our destination is White Sands National Park in New Mexico.
Cool.
It's basically a giant footprint time capsule.
It's really remarkable
Oh, yeah.
the way this former lake bed,
Mm,
called the Alkali Flat,
okay.
it preserves tracks in crazy detail.
So we're not talking just a few footprints
Yeah.
scattered about.
Yeah.
We're talking tracks over huge distances.
Right.
So researchers can piece together ancient journeys.
Yeah, like nowhere else.
Pretty amazing.
Yeah.
And in this prehistoric stomping ground,
Mm-hmm.
researchers have found something super extraordinary.
Okay.
Alongside the footprints of humans and animals,
Mm-hmm.
they found these mysterious linear features,
Interesting.
long grooves
Okay.
etched into the ancient ground.
So this could rewrite our understanding of early human transportation.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, it's traditionally we've associated the invention of vehicles with the rise of like agriculture and
Right.
settled societies,
Mhm.
roughly 10,000 years ago.
Okay.
But these linear features at White Sands,
Yeah.
if the dating holds up,
Okay.
could push that back more than 10,000 years,
Oh,
place them squarely in the last ice age.
mind-blowing.
Yeah,
So what are these linear features?
right.
And what makes researchers think they're connected to some sort of vehicle?
Well, imagine someone dragging a heavy object through soft mud.
Mm,
That's essentially what we're looking at
okay.
White Sands.
Mm-hmm.
These linear features come in 3 distinct types.
Oh,
We've
wow.
got single narrow grooves,
Mm,
wider and shallower runnels.
okay.
And this is where it gets really interesting.
Hey.
Parallel grooves that always stay the same distance apart.
So parallel grooves
Yeah.
sounds suspicious to me.
Uh-huh.
Like something with two poles was being dragged along.
Mm.
Is this where the travoy hypothesis comes in?
Yeah, you got it.
Okay, so
Yeah.
a travoy,
Yeah.
for those who don't know,
Right.
it's basically a sled-like contraction,
Yeah.
two poles
Mm-hmm.
connected by a platform
Right.
that has been used by indigenous peoples historically
Mm-hmm.
to transport
Yeah.
goods and even people.
Right.
So I'm picturing those classic images of travoy
Yeah.
pulled by horses,
Mm-hmm.
dogs,
Yeah.
but we're talking about the last ice age.
Right.
Horses and dogs weren't domesticated yet.
That's the key point.
Okay.
What's so intriguing
Yeah.
about these linear features at White Sands
Hmm.
is that they're not associated with any animal tracks.
So then who or what
Yeah.
was pulling these potential travoy?
That's the big question.
So process of elimination,
Hmm.
it seems like humans
Right.
are the most likely suspects.
Yeah.
But how can researchers be sure
Mm-hmm.
these weren't just
Right.
random marks
Yeah.
caused by
Yeah.
branches or debris?
They like or being blown around by the wind.
It's not just a hunch.
Okay.
There's a whole body of evidence
Okay.
that supports
Mm-hmm.
the human-pulled travoy hypothesis.
Like what?
Well, researchers meticulously analyzed the
Yeah.
shape of the grooves,
Mm-hmm.
the striations or scratch marks
Hmm.
within them,
Okay.
and the way the sediment had been displaced around the edges.
So they were looking for patterns that would indicate a deliberate dragging motion rather than something.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
And they found plenty of evidence
Okay.
to support that interpretation.
I guess.
So the striations, for example,
Hmm.
often run parallel to the direction of the groove,
Mm-hmm.
suggesting a consistent dragging motion.
Makes sense.
And the way the sediment is pushed up
Okay.
around the edges of the grooves
Mm-hmm.
indicates that something was being pulled through it.
Creating a...
Yeah, creating like a wake-like effect.
Okay, so I'm starting to see the picture here.
Yeah. We've got these linear features that look a lot like what a travoy would leave behind,
Mm-hmm.
and we've ruled out animals as the culprits.
Right.
But hold on.
Okay.
Couldn't those parallel grooves have been created by something else?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe people were dragging bundles of firewood or long hunting spears?
Those are valid questions.
Yeah.
And to their credit, the researchers explored a range of
Awesome.
alternative explanations they considered.
Wow.
The possibility of people dragging branches for firewood,
Hmm.
hauling hunting spears, or even, get this,
Okay.
dragging small boats across the muddy shoreline.
Wait, boats?
I know.
In a desert?
Right.
That sounds a bit far-fetched.
But remember, White Sands
Hmm.
was once a lake bed,
yeah.
and the researchers,
Collaborative.
always thinking outside the box,
Hmm.
proposed that some of those linear features
Oh.
might have been formed by dragging small boats across the muddy shoreline.
So what kind of boats could people have been using in this environment?
Right.
Are we talking about Viking longships cruising across the desert?
Not quite.
Okay.
They looked to ethnographic records of
Okay.
indigenous watercraft in North America
Hmm.
and considered a range of possibilities,
Okay.
from simple reed boats
Yep.
to more robust skin-covered kayaks.
Okay.
They reasoned that the most likely type of boat to have been used in this area
Mm-hmm.
would have been a reed boat,
Okay.
as those could have been constructed
Yeah.
using materials readily available in the lakeside environment.
So did those reed boats hold up as a plausible explanation?
Well, not so much.
Right.
While they didn't completely rule out the boat hypothesis,
Mm-hmm.
they acknowledged that it was less likely than the travoy explanation,
Okay.
especially for those deep, narrow grooves that we see
Yeah.
in the Type I and Type III features.
So it's back to the travoy.
Yeah.
But if we're talking about humans pulling these things,
Right.
what kind of evidence do we have for that? Did they find little Ice Age handprints
Well,
clutching the travoy poles?
while we haven't found any prehistoric fingerprints on travoy poles,
Huh?
there's another compelling piece of evidence
Mm-hmm.
that points to humans as the prime movers,
Okay.
the footprints themselves.
Okay.
Remember, the researchers found
Uh-huh.
hundreds of incredibly well-preserved footprints
Yeah.
at White Sands,
Mm-hmm.
many of them in direct association with those linear features.
So we're not just talking about isolated footprints
Right.
scattered randomly across the landscape.
Yeah.
We're seeing patterns of movement
Yeah.
that suggest people were walking alongside
Right.
those potential travoy.
Exactly.
Why?
In some cases, the grooves actually cut right through the footprints,
Wow.
suggesting that the person making the footprints was also pulling whatever created the groove.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
But let's be devil's advocate for a moment.
Right.
Couldn't a mammoth or some other Ice Age creature have dragged something heavy enough
Yeah.
to create these marks?
Uh-huh.
I mean, mammoths were pretty hefty, right?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And it's one that the researchers addressed directly.
Okay.
Remember how I mentioned
Mhm.
that there are no animal tracks found
Mhm.
alongside these linear features?
Right.
If a mammoth or a giant sloth
Yeah.
had been dragging something,
Yeah.
you'd expect to see their footprints alongside the grooves.
Yeah.
But there's simply no evidence of that.
Okay, so we've got the grooves.
Yeah.
We've got the human footprints.
Mm-hmm.
And we've ruled out animals.
Right.
But to really seal the deal on this travoy hypothesis,
Uh-huh.
we need to take a closer look at White Sands
Okay.
itself
All right.
and understand what makes it such a prime location for finding these
Right.
incredibly well-preserved footprints.
It all comes down to the unique conditions of the Alkali Flat.
Okay.
Remember, this is a former lake bed, and the sediments there, fine-grained gypsum rich,
Okay.
create the perfect canvas for capturing footprints in stunning detail.
Wow.
Think of it as nature's own casting studio.
So it's not just any old mud that can do this?
Not at all.
Okay.
It's a delicate recipe of
Right.
sediment-type
Okay.
drying conditions and a process called dolomitization.
The limitization
Yeah,
sounds
well,
complicated.
It is a bit technical,
Yeah.
but essentially
Okay.
it involves magnesium replacing calcium in the sediment,
Mhm.
creating a harder, more durable mineral called dolomite.
Okay.
Think of it as nature's way of
Mhm.
turning those delicate footprints into stone.
Interesting.
And thanks to these unique conditions at White Sands,
Yeah.
we have these incredible traces surviving for thousands of years.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
So we have this perfect storm of conditions
Right.
that has allowed these footprints and these mysterious linear features
Mm-hmm.
to survive for millennia.
Yeah.
It's like stepping back in time
Yeah.
and walking alongside those ancient travelers.
Exactly.
But to really bring this story to life,
Right.
we need to delve into the details of those footprints themselves.
Okay.
What can they tell us about the people who made them,
Yeah.
the journeys they undertook,
Mm-hmm.
and the challenges they faced?
That's where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
We're not just talking about abstract traces in the ground. We're talking about families,
Okay.
children, grandparents,
Mhm.
all moving together across this vast landscape.
Now you've got my attention.
All right.
Let's dive into those footprint analyses and uncover the stories they tell about the people who walked this land
Let's do it.
thousands of years ago.
Yeah. Remember those excavations at WHSA Locality 2? That's where the researchers found a remarkable set of footprints.
Okay.
On a surface they labeled TH2,
Mm-hmm.
right in the heart of the area where those linear features were concentrated.
So we're zeroing in on a specific spot within White Sands, where we have both the intriguing grooves and a bunch of well-preserved footprints.
Precisely.
Okay.
And what's fascinating is that the researchers were able to identify two distinct groups of footprints based on size, suggesting the presence of adults and children traveling together.
So we're not just talking about individual footprints scattered randomly.
Right.
We're seeing patterns of movement that hint at social groups.
Yeah.
Tell me more about these two groups.
Okay.
What have the researchers learned about them?
Well, the larger footprints,
likely
belonging to adults, averaged around 291 millimeters in length. Based on standard foot-to-height ratios, this suggests individuals who were roughly 5'8" chullers.
Pretty average height.
Yeah.
For humans even today.
Pretty average height.
Okay, so adults of a typical height for humans?
Yeah.
Nothing too unusual there?
Right.
What about the smaller footprints?
Okay.
How tiny are we talking?
Well, the smaller footprints averaged around 210 millimeters in length. Now, using the same foot-to-height ratios and taking into account growth patterns, the researchers estimated that these tracks were made by children around 10 years old.
Wow, 10 years old.
Yeah.
That's pretty young.
Right.
To be trekking across a harsh, icy landscape.
Yeah.
Makes you wonder about the roles these children might have played within these social groups.
Yeah.
Were they just tagging along?
Right.
Or were they actively involved in the journey?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
The presence of children's footprints alongside those of adults, especially in association with potential travoy tracks, suggests that these young individuals weren't just passive passengers.
So they weren't just being carried around.
Right.
They were actively involved in the journey.
Yeah, they were likely actively participating in the group's movements and maybe even contributing to tasks.
So it kind of challenges our modern notions of childhood, doesn't it?
It does.
These weren't kids spending their days in classrooms or playing video games.
Right.
They were out there facing real challenges alongside their families.
You hit the nail on the head.
Yeah.
It provides a glimpse into a different way of life, where children, even at a young age, were learning essential skills and contributing to the group's survival.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
It really paints a picture of a community working together, sharing responsibilities.
Yeah.
This is starting to feel like a real story about family and shared experience.
It is.
Yeah.
And remember, this was during the last ice age.
Right.
A time of significant environmental challenges.
Yeah.
Resources were likely scarce, and survival depended on cooperation.
Yeah.
These children were essential members of these social groups.
We've got adults. We've got 10-year-old kids.
Right.
All traveling together.
Yeah.
Possibly using travoy to help transport their belongings. But the researchers found evidence of even younger children at the site.
You're right.
Tell me about those tiny footprints.
Okay. On a different surface at WHSA Locality 2, labeled TH3, the researchers found a cluster of even smaller footprints, averaging around 154 millimeters in length.
Those must have been made by some seriously little feet.
Yeah.
How old were these kids?
Based on their analysis, the researchers estimated that these tracks were made by children around 4 years old.
4 years old?
Yeah.
That's incredibly young.
I know.
To be navigating such a challenging environment really makes you wonder about the dynamics of these ancient social groups.
Yeah.
Were they carrying these toddlers the whole way?
It suggests a strong emphasis on communal care and shared responsibility within those groups. These tiny tots weren't left behind.
Okay.
They were brought along on the journey, cared for, and protected by the group.
It really speaks to the strength of their social bonds, doesn't it?
It does.
They were looking out for each other.
Yeah.
Ensuring the survival of even their most vulnerable members.
Right.
It makes you wonder, what were those journeys like?
Right.
What challenges did they face? What stories did they share around the campfire at night?
We can only imagine.
Yeah.
But those footprints offer a poignant reminder that these are real people living real lives filled with joys and sorrows, hopes and fears.
Yeah.
Just like us.
Okay, so we've got multiple age groups represented at White Sands.
Right.
Suggesting that these ancient travelers were moving together as families or even larger social units.
Yeah.
Did the researchers find any clues about how many people might have been involved in these journeys?
Okay.
Were we talking about small, intimate groups or larger, more complex communities?
That's where it gets a little tricky. Estimating group size solely from footprints is a challenge.
I can see how it would be difficult to tell if a set of footprints represents one person making multiple trips back and forth.
Exactly.
Or a group of people moving together at the same time.
Right. Archaeologists use various techniques to try and distinguish between those scenarios, but it often requires additional evidence, like the spatial distribution of artifacts or the presence of campsites. In the case of White Sands, where we primarily have footprints, it's harder to pinpoint the exact number of people involved.
So no precise head count. But were the researchers able to make any educated guesses based on what they found?
They were. For example, in one area where they found a particularly dense cluster of footprints associated with linear features, they estimated that at least 6 individuals were present.
6 individuals, that's already a sizable group, especially considering the harsh environment they were traveling through. You said that's a minimum estimate, right?
Precisely. It's possible that even more people were present, but their footprints simply haven't been preserved or haven't yet been discovered.
So we're potentially talking about family groups, bands of hunter-gatherers, perhaps even larger communities, moving together across this landscape. Really opens up the imagination to think about what their lives were like.
It does. It paints a picture of a dynamic and interconnected social world where people relied on each other for survival and shared the challenges and triumphs of life in this demanding environment.
Okay, I'm ready to take a leap of imagination here. And try to picture what a typical day might have been like for these Ice Age travelers. We've got families, children, possibly even larger communities moving together across this vast icy landscape.
Let's imagine the sun rising over the Alkali Flat, casting long shadows across the gypsum dunes. The air is crisp and cold, but the group is already stirring, preparing for another day's journey.
I can picture them huddled around a small fire, warming their hands and sharing a simple breakfast. What kind of food do you think they might have been eating?
They might have been eating dried meat. Nuts or berries? Whatever sustenance they had managed to gather or hunt.
Makes sense.
And their clothing, probably made from animal hides, would have offered protection from the biting wind.
I bet those kids, wide-eyed with curiosity, were watching the adults pack up their belongings and prepare the travoy for another day's haul.
You're probably right. The travoy would have been loaded with essential items, tools, food, maybe even a makeshift shelter. Or bedding.
It must have been a challenging journey.
It would have been.
Navigating this unforgiving terrain. Pulling a heavy travoy behind them.
They might have followed ancient trails, relying on their knowledge of the landscape and the stars to guide their way.
Makes sense.
Taking turns pulling the travoy and supporting each other.
Those travoys must have been crucial for helping them to conserve energy and transport their belongings across such vast distances.
Absolutely.
I can picture the adults. Their faces etched with determination. Their footsteps leaving those lasting impressions in the soft sediment.
And alongside them, those resilient children, their smaller footprints, a testament to their strength and adaptability.
It must have been a harsh life, but also one filled with a deep connection to land and to each other.
It's humbling to realize that despite the vast gulf of time that separates us, we share that common human experience. We are all connected by the same fundamental needs for survival, connection, and meaning.
It's a powerful thought.
It is.
Okay, we have explored the potential travoy use at White Sands, delved into the lives of those Ice Age travelers, and I have to say, this has been a truly eye-opening journey of discovery.
It has.
But now I'm curious what happens next. The researchers don't just stop at White Sands, do they?
You're right, they don't. This is where things get really exciting. Remember how we talked about those tantalizing hints? That similar linear features might exist at other archaeological sites around the world?
Yes. It's like we've stumbled upon a hidden chapter in human history.
It is.
And now we're eager to see if the story continues elsewhere.
And that's what makes this discovery so potentially groundbreaking. It's not just about White Sands. It's about opening up a whole new avenue of archaeological exploration. a chance to re-examine the pad with fresh eyes and challenge our assumptions about early human technology.
So how do we go about finding these potential travoy tracks in other parts of the world?
Yeah.
What should archaeologists be looking for?
Well, for starters, they need to be looking for the right kind of environment. The researchers suggest that any site with well-preserved footprint surfaces from the Pleistocene or even earlier would be worth a second look. Think former lake beds, coastal plains, or even cave floors. The conditions might have been right for preserving those delicate traces.
So we're not just talking about deserts like white sands.
Right.
We're talking about expanding our search to a wide range of environments.
Oh, exactly.
And revisiting sites that might have been dismissed as unimportant or uninteresting in the past.
Exactly. And it's not just about the environment itself. It's also about the types of activities that might have been taking place.
So we're looking for places where people might have been transporting goods or resources, where those travoy would have been put to good use.
Exactly.
What specific clues within the archaeological record should we be looking for?
Well, there are a few key things that stand out.
Okay.
First, the presence of linear features, especially those with consistent spacing or branching patterns, should raise a red flag.
Okay.
Then look for the association of those features with human footprints, which strengthens the case for human activity.
Right.
Finally, the absence of animal tracks alongside the grooves helps to rule out other explanations.
It sounds like a subtle kind of detective work.
Yeah.
Carefully observing the patterns and relationships within the archaeological record.
You got it.
Yeah.
And it's also about recognizing that we don't have all the answers and that we can learn so much more when we work together, bringing together archaeologists, geologists, paleoanthropologists, and indigenous knowledge holders. And help to create a more comprehensive and nuanced understanding of the past.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Okay, this is where I get really excited.
Right.
It's like we've been given a new set of lenses to view the past. And who knows what other amazing discoveries might be waiting to be made.
It's exciting.
But before we get carried away with visions of travoy tracks crisscrossing the globe, we need to address the elephant in the room.
Okay.
Or rather, the mammoth in the footprint.
Yes. The dating controversy. We can't ignore the fact that the initial age estimate of 22,000 years has been challenged by some researchers, and the debate is still ongoing.
So even though we've been talking about these potential travoy as being incredibly old, possibly from the last ice age, we need to be a bit cautious about making definitive statements about their age. Until the scientific community reaches a consensus.
You're absolutely right. But I think it's important to remember that the evidence for human-pulled travoy at White Sands is still incredibly compelling, regardless of the exact age.
That's a good point. The patterns of footprints, the linear features, those neo-ichnological experiments we discussed, all of that points towards the use of this ancient transport technology, whether it was 22,000 years ago or a bit younger.
Precisely.
Okay.
And the possibility of finding similar traces at other sites around the world is incredibly exciting, regardless of their exact age.
So we have a bit of a scientific mystery on our hands.
We do.
But that's part of what makes archaeology so fascinating.
It is.
It's a constant process. Discovery, debate, and refinement,
Exactly. And as new evidence emerges and dating techniques continue to improve, we'll gain a clearer picture of when and where humans were using travoy and other forms of early transport technology.
Okay, I'm ready to embrace the mystery.
All right.
And keep my eyes peeled for any news about those potential travoy tracks in other parts of the world. It's exciting to think about what other secrets the past might hold.
Now, speaking of secrets, there's one more aspect of this research that I think you'll find particularly fascinating. It involves the collaboration between the researchers and indigenous communities.
You mentioned earlier the importance of including indigenous perspectives in this kind of research. I'm really interested to hear more about that.
Well, from the very beginning, the researchers recognized that this wasn't just a scientific endeavor. It was a story that had deep cultural significance for the indigenous peoples of this region.
Mm-hmm.
They actively sought out collaborations with indigenous communities.
Okay.
Not just as consultants or informants, but as equal partners in the research process.
So it wasn't a case of scientists coming in, collecting data and publishing their findings without considering the cultural implications.
Not at all.
Okay.
They knew that indigenous knowledge systems had a lot to offer.
Yeah.
Especially when it came to understanding the deep history and cultural practices of this place.
Yeah.
And they wanted to ensure that indigenous voices were included in the interpretation and dissemination of this knowledge.
That's great to hear. What was the response from the indigenous communities when they were presented with this evidence of potential travoy use by their ancestors?
It was truly remarkable.
Okay.
The indigenous collaborators immediately recognized those potential travoy tracks, drawing on their own traditional knowledge of these ancient transport technologies.
That's amazing.
It was a powerful moment of connection between different ways of knowing, a testament to the enduring legacy of indigenous knowledge systems.
It gives me chills to think about that connection.
Yeah.
Across thousands of years, it really highlights the importance of respectful collaboration and the recognition of diverse perspectives when we're trying to understand the past.
I agree, and it underscores the fact that archaeology isn't just about digging up artifacts. It's about understanding the human stories behind those objects.
Yeah.
And the enduring connections between past and present.
Okay, Sar. This deep dive has been a real whirlwind of information and insights.
It has.
We've explored the amazing footprints and travoy tracks at White Sands, considered the evidence for their age and use, and even taken a leap of imagination to picture the lives of the people who walked this land thousands of years ago.
And we've learned about the importance of including diverse perspectives, especially those of indigenous communities in the research process.
Right.
It's been a truly enriching journey.
It really has. And on that note, I think it's time to wrap up this incredible deep dive into the world of ancient footprints and potential travoy use at White Sands.
All right.
But before we say goodbye, I'd love to hear your final thoughts on this discovery and its implications for our understanding of the past.
I'd be happy to share some final reflections.
Okay.
I think what struck me most about this research is the way it challenges our assumptions about the ingenuity and resourcefulness of our ancestors.
Okay.
We tend to view the past through a somewhat limited lens, focusing on grand monuments and technological marvels.
Okay.
But this discovery reminds us that even seemingly simple traces, like footprints and drag marks, can unlock incredible secrets about human behavior and innovation.
It's about learning to appreciate the subtle clues that the past has left behind, right?
Exactly.
And realizing that those clues might be hiding in unexpected places, just waiting for us to uncover them.
Exactly.
And I think that's a powerful message.
It is.
To carry with us as we continue to explore the mysteries of the past. It really does make you realize that the past is full of surprises.
Yeah.
And that we're constantly learning new things about our ancestors and their capabilities.
Yeah.
But as we wrap up this deep dive, I'm left with a few lingering questions.
Okay, shoot.
We've talked about the potential for finding similar travoy tracks at other sites around the world.
Yeah.
What are the chances of that actually happening? Is this a one-off discovery at White Sands?
Right.
Or could this open up a whole new understanding of early human transportation?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And one that has archaeologists buzzing with excitement.
Really?
Yeah. The researchers at White Sands believe this discovery could be just the tip of the iceberg.
Wow.
They suggest that similar linear features might have been overlooked or misinterpreted at other sites, simply because we haven't been looking for them.
It's like we've been wearing blinders, focusing on certain types of artifacts while ignoring others that might hold just as much, if not more, information about the past.
Exactly. We've been so focused on finding stone tools and durable artifacts that we might have missed these more subtle traces of perishable technologies like wooden travoy.
Okay.
Now that we know what to look for, it's like a whole new world of possibilities.
Wow. So what's the next step?
Okay.
Are archaeologists already packing their bags?
Yeah.
And heading out to scour the globe? for ancient travoy tracks?
They are.
Okay.
This discovery has sparked a wave of interest in revisiting existing sites and exploring new ones with a fresh perspective. And the really exciting thing is that it's not just about finding those linear features themselves.
Right.
It's about combining that evidence with other clues.
Okay.
Like footprints, artifacts, and environmental data to paint a more complete picture of the past.
It sounds like we're on the cusp of a paradigm shift in archaeology.
I think so.
A move away from simply cataloging objects to understanding the behaviors and technologies of the people who created them.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
This discovery has the potential to revolutionize our understanding of early human mobility and the ways in which they interacted with their environments.
So this deep dive has been a real eye-opener.
It has.
We've journeyed back in time to explore the incredible footprints and travoy tracks at White Sands.
Right.
We've grappled with the dating controversies, considered alternative interpretations, and imagined the lives of those Ice Age travelers.
Yeah, and we've even peeked into the future of archaeology, considering the exciting possibilities that this discovery has opened up.
It's been a real privilege to learn about all this with you.
It's been a pleasure to share it.
And I think it's safe to say this story is far from over. As archaeologists continue to explore the world with this newfound awareness, who knows what other amazing discoveries await us?
It's really exciting to think about.
It is. And on that note,
yeah,
I want to leave our listeners with a challenge.
Okay.
The next time you're out exploring, take a moment to look closely at the ground beneath your feet.
Yeah.
Pay attention to the subtle traces.
Okay.
The patterns, the unexpected marks that might hold clues to the stories of the past.
That's a great idea. You might just stumble upon the next big archaeological discovery.
And until then, keep exploring, keep questioning.
Yes.
And keep diving deep into the fascinating world around us.
Happy trails.